All right, welcome to Halitics on Thursday. It is the 18th day of April. I think I got the date and the day right for a change. I often get one or both wrong. Hope you'll join me by calling in. Let's have a conversation. Haven't had one in a while with you, but I would really appreciate that. You can also always comment on the YouTube channel what you think we're doing here. And don't forget, you can join the Halitics Facebook group as well. We always have spirited conversations there. So a lot going on at Halitics. I got to tell you, what the spectacle in Congress of an Ivy League president, not professor, president, bending over backwards to accommodate this nasty Elise Stefanik, who is, I guess, carrying a cudgel for snowflake pro-Israel students who can't bear to hear the song From the River to the Sea, the chant gets them all worked up. From the river to the sea, Palestine must be free. Somehow is so upsetting to them. I guess they prefer Palestine, kept in a small little concentration camp, 2.5 million people in a little desert along the Mediterranean Sea. That's their preference, rather than a free country where everyone has economic, religious, and political security. That isn't acceptable to some students on American campuses. And rather than saying, go pound sand, the Republican Congress is taking up the mantle of that this is somehow anti-Semitism, to demand that the people that the Jewish state is oppressing, the people that the Jewish state is persecuting, aren't allowed to have a voice on U.S. campuses. That seems to be the position in Congress, and it's very, 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 very upsetting. It breaks my heart. It really means, when we talk about people, we talk about the danger of Trump, right, to fascism. That we could have fascism because of Trump, that he's somehow something different, qualitatively different. Folks, fascism is here right now. We don't have freedom of speech. And those who have been champions in the past of the First Amendment seem to have backed away from the idea that, hey, even if I don't like what you have to say, you have a right to say it. And in fact, the people who are being told you don't even get a voice, you don't get to say your piece, you don't get to defend your people, are the ones who are actually the victims, right? The people. It's like you're saying to the slaves. Let me give a better analogy. What Congress is saying today to pro-Palestinian voices is analogous. And not just Congress. What many progressives are saying, what college presidents are saying, what academics are saying, what lawyers are saying to pro-Palestinian voices is tantamount to telling pro-Jewish voices in 1940, you don't get to rally against a German professor. You don't get to speak out against the Nazis. It's really the same thing. The Jewish state, Israel, and I'm Jewish. And what bothers me, when I think back about in my life, what I'm embarrassed by, what I'm ashamed, what hurts me, what keeps me up at night, is when I think of the ways I've hurt other people in my life. I'm not always the nicest guy. And it really bothers me when I think about things I've said to other people. It really does. Now, I got teased when I was a kid. I wouldn't say I was always a victim, but I was a victim of bullies on occasion. And I sure as hell didn't like it. But you know what? Thinking about times when I got teased in 4th grade, 6th grade, whatever, that doesn't keep me up at night. I'm not like, oh my God, I can't believe that kid was so mean to me. Or, it also could be even physical. Like, kids might give you a dead arm. I don't know if you remember that. That doesn't, it bothered me at the time. I didn't like it. I didn't like getting shoved around on occasion because I was a small kid. and I wasn't very athletic. But I'm totally at peace with that. It doesn't bother me in the least. What bothers me now is when I think about the ways I mistreated others. And so what bothers me is not that maybe a few people are speaking out against Jewish students in ways that make them uncomfortable, or even that might make me uncomfortable. For example, I showed it, right? The knife and fork, the bloody knife and fork that were presented to criticize Chemerinsky. Let me show that to you right now. I wasn't really going to go in this direction. I want to get to the hearing, and I will. But this is upsetting, right? I mean, honestly, I don't like seeing that bloody knife and fork. And I do get that this is arguably anti-Semitic, and it really isn't pretty. I don't like it. But you know what? It doesn't keep me up at night. Chemerinsky is elite. Chemerinsky is doing just fine. What keeps me up at night are the thought of the 34,000 victims dead of Israeli aggression. That's what keeps me up. What keeps me up is 1 million plus being starved. That's what keeps me up. Apparently, though, that doesn't particularly trouble Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. And I'm not getting the sense that Colombia president is really upset by that so much either. I think she goes by Manoush. I'm not sure her exact name. Shafik. Manoush Shafik is her name. So let's play a little bit about it. This is all. Hey, why aren't you cracking down harder on those Palestinians? Why aren't you taking further action? Why aren't you expelling people because they made a few snowflakes uncomfortable? And the irony is so rich because the Republicans are always the ones saying, "Oh, I can't believe those poor little college students. They don't like being, criticized." But you can't, my God, if it's a pro-Israel college student, you pretty much can't say boo to them without risking expulsion, apparently. At least that's what Republicans sure as heck would like. Let's go to this video here, and I hope it starts in the right place. I have all these problems. It's so frustrating, that stupid Google thing, but let's see if this works correctly. We'll see.
Of babies, of innocent Israeli citizens of...
All right, I'm going to just start it a little earlier. That actually did start where it was supposed to, or where I had said it. So that's on me. Here's where I wanted to start this video.
False reports accusing Arabs and Muslims of decapitating the heads of children and being rapists.
All right, so she's complaining because some students said, hey, these are false reports. It's not true that Hamas beheaded babies and used rape as a weapon. It's not true. And, so Stefanik is quoting the Palestinian protesters saying, hey, the media is lying to you. And guess what? The media was lying. There weren't decapitated babies. A deep dive by a number of reputable news sources and investigators concluded no decapitated babies, none. And every single allegation of rape on October 7th that could possibly be tracked down was debunked. Not one victim of rape was proven on October 7th or even shown to be likely. So in fact, the protesters said, hey, they're lying about what happened on October 7th. They were right. They were telling the truth. Stefanik is going to lie in the teeth of that evidence.
We know that there were decapitations of babies, of innocent...
We don't. It's just not true. That didn't happen.
Israeli citizens, of seniors, of women. There were rapes, and yet...
There weren't. That's just not true. That hasn't been proved. We don't know that. She's lying. She's lying. And Manoush Shafik should know that. Let's see if she responds appropriately.
Columbia hired this individual as a professor. How did that hiring process work? Were you aware of those statements before the hiring?
I share with you your repugnance at those remarks.
Why? The remarks were accurate. Why are you repugned? Why are you repulsed by them? President Shafiq. The remarks were accurate. Why aren't you throwing it right back in Stefanik's face? You coward. You're a coward, Manu Shafiq, President Shafiq.
Completely understand that. On my watch, faculty who make remarks that cross the line in terms of anti-Semitism, there will be consequences for them.
What are the consequences in this case?
I have 5 cases at the moment who have either been either taken out of the classroom or dismissed.
And
all right, so I'll stop it. That's just absolutely sickening. The professor was correct. And instead of telling Stefanik, nope, you're wrong, you just got it flat out wrong, she caves, she cowers, or maybe she just agrees. Maybe she or she doesn't care. You don't get to call Israel out no matter what. You don't get to call out pro-genocide propaganda out. Apparently that may be the case. The real problem, and while Congress is focused on this idiocy, this nonsense, we really have to focus on what the real issues are on college campuses, and that is the anti-Palestinian voices that are loud, proud, and uncowed. That's what we really need to focus on. So actually at Columbia University, they actually did something right. They took action against the Jewish students. Remember, I don't know if you remember this, but back in late October, early November, a lot of protests at Columbia, and at one protest against, Israel, against the Israeli unfolding genocide in Gaza, there were chemical agent was used against the protesters. And there were a lot of complaints, and there were a lot of people saying, hey, the university isn't doing anything to find out who did it, to capture, to issue some sort of disciplinary proceeding or to start a disciplinary proceeding. So they found the student, apparently, and he was suspended. So I give the university credit. Yeah, you launched a chemical attack. You don't get to do that, period. So his defense, oh, it was no big deal. It was just some non-toxic fart spray. No, that's an assault. Thank God it wasn't toxic, if that's true, and I don't necessarily believe it. But again, loud, proud, and uncowed, the voices for genocide. No remorse, no acknowledgement. Hey, they have a right to speak. They have a right to present their viewpoint, especially because they're on the side of the victims. Doesn't it matter? Does it matter? It matters to me if you're on the side of the victims, if you're standing up to the power structure. And, sometimes it gets a little bit confusing, right? Sometimes people in power claim that they're victims. We see that a lot. Oh, you're only going after me because I'm a woman. Hillary Clinton, one of the most powerful people in the world. Somebody who has caused tremendous harm, who's used her power in very, very bad ways. Oh, you're just going after me because I'm a woman. No, you're not the victim here. Sorry. You're the victimizer. So you have to be careful. And usually my test for whether you're on the side of the oppressed, the victims, who's poorer? Who has less power? Not are you a member of a traditionally marginalized group? That doesn't make you a victim. What's your current status? Whose side are you on? Not who are you? Who are you fighting for? Who are you fighting against? That's how I decide whether you're speaking for the marginalized, for the oppressed. Just simply saying, oh, I'm going to break some glass ceiling. For whom? For Sheryl Sandberg? For a billionaire? Or are you doing it for people who are living, paycheck to paycheck? Are you doing it for people who are whose freedom of movement is severely constricted? Are you doing it for people who are being bombed? That's how I decide. And the protesters at Columbia against Israel, they're on the side of the people getting bombed, getting shot, getting starved. So that's whose side I'm on. Period. The examples of colleges mistreating, abusing students based on their views, based on who they are far more obvious, far more prevalent when it comes to Palestinian students, when it comes to Muslim students. They're the ones who are seeing their rights taken away, who are being systematically persecuted. And Congress couldn't give a fat rat's butt. So this is quite an extraordinary quite an extraordinary story about a quite extraordinary student. And I saw that the Hill Rising covered this earlier, which I'm somewhat disappointed by, because a lot of times I actually get my stories out before they do on similar topics. I think we have similar interests often, but I like to beat them even if I know they get many more viewers, which you can change. Click like, click subscribe right now. Let's beat that algorithm. Did somebody say that? Let's beat the algorithm. Yes, we can. We can beat that YouTube algorithm if you click like, if you click subscribe. This woman here, valedictorian of her class at Columbia. And before I play the video, I just was a little surprised because apparently she was elected valedictorian. I thought being valedictorian is you have the best grades, right? I thought that's how you get it, not you're elected. But what they do at USC, they had, you have basically a straight A average or maybe one A minus. You have to have a 3.98, and I think that may be unweighted. I'm not sure. So if you're in that cohort where you've never gotten any grade below an A minus, in fact, your only grade below a straight A was an A minus, maybe once, then you are eligible to be the USC valedictorian. Obviously a tremendous honor. It's a prestigious university. It's a very big school, so you're competing against maybe 10, 12,000 other undergrads. It's really extraordinary. So she got it. She got it, and I was like, one of my pet, and I, by the way, was a humanities major. I was an English major. Sort of, some people call those soft majors. I'm not saying it was an easy major, but it ain't biology. It ain't physics. So I'm always a little more impressed, even though I myself was an English major, when I hear about science majors, STEM majors, science, tech, engineering, mathematics, who are straight A students. And she fits that bill. So let's play the video real quick.
The core message I wanted to get across was one of hope.
The valedictorian of the University of Southern California class of 2024 won't be giving a speech at graduation. Going against tradition, the school's provost wrote in an open letter that rescinding the invitation to speak was, quote, necessary to maintain the safety of our campus and students. All
right, so this woman, you can see she has a Muslim headscarf. She is brilliant. She's the valedictorian. This is the tradition at University of Southern California. The valedictorian speaks. So they're saying somehow if they let her speak, that will pose a danger? Let's hear some more. Just want to make sure you understand what's going on here. This is right now that this is happening.
Bossum will graduate top of her class with a major in biomedical engineering and an interdisciplinary minor in resistance to genocide. That's a program at USC that gives courses in topics like the Armenian.
Right, so she's a science major. She's also focused on genocide. Her name is Tabassum, by the way, Tabassum, I believe, Tabassum, if you want to look that up. Incredibly impressive person. Now, apparently, the fact that she minored in genocide studies means she's not the right person to speak at her class graduation? It would seem to me that makes her the exact right person to speak. Is there any time more relevant? Could anything be more germane in our day right now than somebody who's an expert, who's studied genocide? And by the way, whose co-religionists are now suffering a genocide. What could be more correct than for the University of Southern California to platform Tabassum at her graduation? I can't think of anything. If you disagree, let me know. 240-242-5646. And if you don't call, put it in the chat, put it in the conversation, put it in the comments. Tell me why Tabassum shouldn't be speaking at her graduation.
And Rwandan genocides, the Native American experience, and the Holocaust. Tabassum told CBS News that she has not been informed of what the safety concerns are.
I was never given the evidence that any safety concerns and that any security concerns were founded.
Tabassum has been...
It's so absurd that this is their defense. If there are security concerns because Asna Tabassum is going to speak about genocide in today's world, if that's what you're worried about, then you know what? You make sure USC. You know what? Last I checked, I could be wrong. The University of Southern California is one of the wealthiest universities in the country. Extraordinary amount of resources at its disposal. All those big shot movie producers and directors who went there. Other California billionaires at that University of Spoiled Children. I'm sorry, USC. You know, one of the smartest people I ever met went to USC. And I remember she was an intern when I was a lawyer. And she was choosing between Stanford and USC. And I was like, really? You turned down Stanford for US? Like, that was like, I wouldn't have done that. But she said, hey, they gave me a full ride, man. Everything was paid for. I would have had to pay some at Stanford. By the way, Stanford changes policy. Her family might have had some money. I'm not really clear on it. I don't want to get into that specificity. But right now, I believe if your family income is under a certain level, and it's in low six figures, then you don't even have to pay tuition. So she would have gotten that same deal, I believe, today if she were high school grad. But at that point, 25 somewhat years ago, whatever it was, she would have had to pay. Her family would have had to pay, and she didn't have that much money. So she got a full ride at USC. Super smart person. So and not spoiled at all, a lot of really brilliant people at USC, but also a lot of people at USC who are family have a lot of money. And they can absolutely afford the security necessary to make sure that Asna Tabassum can speak without threat of violence at the school.
Clear in her support for Palestinian people and asserts that she is not anti-Semitic.
Now we get to it. Can't have that. Can't have a student speaking in support of Palestine now, can we? That's what's happened to our free speech rights, folks. Completely sacrificed. For what? For what? Why? You know, remember what I said? I worry more about things I've done to hurt people than I ever worry about what others have done to me. I don't get the privileged, the elites out there who are so worried about those speaking out against genocide. Shouldn't they be worried about the people committing the atrocities? Shouldn't they be worried about the murders that are being perpetrated every day in Gaza, the West Bank? Why isn't that their priority? I don't understand it. But instead, they don't want you to hear about it. I'll show you a letter that exemplifies this in a few moments. But let me play just a little more of this video. But again, why is Asna Tabassum being barred from her graduation speech that she's totally entitled to, which she earned by dint of an incredible 4 years of academic outstanding excellence. And because she was elected valedictorian with a, 3.98 plus straight A's in an extremely difficult science major. But she's not allowed to speak at her graduation.
Semitic. Years before the October 7th Hamas terrorist attack on Israel and Israel's subsequent retaliation, she shared a link on her private Instagram page that gave information regarding what was happening in Gaza. Pro-Israel student groups took their complaints about the website that Tabassum did not create or write to the school's administration.
I'm not apologizing for the link that I put in my Instagram. What I am saying is that I'm committed to human rights. I'm committed to the human rights for all people.
She describes herself as a first-generation South Asian American Muslim who wears a hijab. Tabassum says she is being penalized for living out, quote, the very lessons USC taught me.
I think anyone who's watching this can draw their own conclusion. I look what I look like. I am who I am.
This turn of events has some USC students questioning whether this is safety or censorship.
I don't think there's any question. Obviously, it's censorship. Obviously, she's being prevented from speaking because she has drawn attention to the oppression by Israel of Gaza, because she has refused to be silent. And because of that, she's being censored. We do not live in a democracy if this is allowed to stand. We do not have freedom if this is allowed to stand. Now, my argument would be stronger if it was UCLA, because that would be a state school and it would be the state itself that is preventing her from speaking. But this is all but a state institution. Tremendous amount of support from both the state of California and the federal government. Colleges and universities cannot discriminate. They are saying your voice will not be heard because you're speaking out in support of victims, because you're speaking out against a U.S., quote, ally, unquote. That is not freedom. That is not democracy.
People were upset about that, and it's kind of, people are like believing that it's just kind of limiting her free speech.
She's talking about issues that are important to not only our university and to students, but to the world, and I think that that is someone that should speak at our as a valedictorian, and like she's more than qualified.
In canceling Tabassum's speech, USC says, quote, we cannot ignore the fact that similar risks have led to harassment and even violence at other campuses. Graduation at USC, which normally draws about 65,000 people to campus, will take place on May 10th. Asna Tabassum, the 2024 valedictorian, has not said whether or not she will attend. For Inside Edition Digital, I'm TC Newman.
All right, so that's a really well done story, really thorough. Glad they interviewed some other students. It's clear her free speech rights are being impinged on. It's clear that the university is responding to pressure from, I assume, Zionist organizations. I really can't even tell you. But this is a perfect example of our not living in a democracy. And there's plenty of other... Why am I hearing that noise? Sorry, folks. Let's see. I hope it isn't going out there for you, but we'll see if it stops. I got to keep going, though. So here is, and I want to just show it because, again, we're taught, the focus in Congress, the focus in Congress is supposedly discrimination against Muslims, right? Or no, it's not. The focus is on anti-Semitism. And yet all the examples that I can find on college campuses are of Muslims being oppressed, having their voices silenced, being not disallowed from even speaking out against their persecution. And again, could Congress care less? So I think it's worth showing it again. I know I've shown it quite a bit, but just from that University of California Law School event where the Palestinian student was assaulted. And again, I mean, we're not just talking about people not, saying a phrase that you don't like that makes you uncomfortable, calling Israel a genocidal state, saying it's apartheid. Because that was one of the examples I think a professor gave. Well, some people are uncomfortable because Israel has been called an apartheid state. Oh, I'm sorry that they're uncomfortable. Maybe they should be uncomfortable because Israel is an apartheid state, not because someone calls it an apartheid state. This is what Congress should be looking at. Why is a University of California, Berkeley law professor assaulting a student?
Where millions of Muslims around the world fast.
And what is she saying? What is her message? This is Ramadan when we fast. That's what she says. She's talking about her religion, and in that moment, she's grabbed from behind by the professor. I wouldn't say it's a chokehold, but it's bad.
We have attorneys. We have attorneys.
Okay, you don't have to get aggressive.
Please leave our house. You are guests at our house.
This is our First Amendment right.
No,
this
is my house.
All right, so they're saying, no, you don't have a First Amendment right. I think it's very ambiguous. I think it's very unclear whether she does have that First Amendment right. Yes, it's the Chemerinsky Fisk House. This is a University of California Law School event, paid for by the University of California Law School, a state institution. So it's kind of a mixed bag, right? So where are like our champions on this issue? I'm going to show another video, but I wanted to get to this too because the voices in the past that have said, no, we cannot censor, we cannot shut people up, we have to respect dissident voices. That is what democracy is all about. Those voices have gone silent or gone to the dark side. I was sent this, I don't know if you can read it. I hope you can. I'll blow it up a little bit if I can. But I was sent this letter from the New York Times, and the writer of it, Floyd Abrams, I believe, was at one point, I guess he's in his 80s now. I think Floyd Abrams was a lawyer at the ACLU and really known as a champion of the First Amendment. In other words, even if I don't like what you have to say, I will fight, for your right to say it, no matter how much I may disagree with it. But that's not the Floyd Abrams who's in this letter. This is the Floyd Abrams who talks about free speech's limits. And he's like, oh, look, it's a private home. And how she shows inappropriate behavior. I find that kind of astonishing. When is it the wrong time to speak out against genocide? When is it when is the right time? Maybe I better ask it a little differently, Mr. Abrams. When is the right time for people to say this is wrong? We're supporting genocide. We're killing in great numbers, in tens, in hundreds, in thousands, in tens of thousands. Our weapons are being used to kill people purely because of where they live, purely because of their religion, purely because of their ethnicity. When is it okay to speak out against that? Because you didn't like it at the dean's home. Apparently that's not a good place for you to do it. Now, again, I have sympathy for Dean Chemerinsky. I think, he's demonstrated he's pretty good on this issue compared to most. He wasn't good, and his wife sure as heck wasn't at their house when they assaulted a student. And again, he says, she doesn't have any free speech rights in a private home. Again, this is very, very disappointing coming from a well-known First Amendment law champion who I can guarantee you, if it was his client, he would be arguing up and down that the First Amendment absolutely applies because this was a public event paid for by the taxpayers in the home of a public, somebody who, a well-known public figure, which Dean Chemerinsky absolutely is. But instead, where's the sympathy? Not with the person speaking out for victims, but speaking, as Abrams is, for power, for the elites, the wealthy, right? The beautiful home, probably a couple $1 million minimum home. That's whose sympathy, that's where Abrams' sympathy lies. It's so, so sad. So what we're seeing in Congress, what we're seeing from our representatives is tremendous concern for the rich, the powerful, the elites, academics. We have to make sure, unless they're academics speaking for Palestine, like the professor that Stefanik smeared by saying he was lying, when in fact he accurately, correctly pointed out that babies were not beheaded by Hamas and rape was not used as a weapon on October 7 by Hamas. But if the professor, if the dean is on the side of the wealthier country, the more powerful country, the country that we are supporting with our weaponry, anything goes. Do whatever you want. Grab a woman from behind, and shove her around. But gosh, she doesn't have any right to speak. Tell the valedictorian of her school she doesn't get to speak at graduation. And one more, just because it's just so evident that the rules for the rich and powerful, the elites, those who are on the side of Israel, that the rules are totally different for them than for those speaking out against oppression, apartheid, genocide. This video from Harvard, right? And I've shown this on here too, but I cannot, because these are the examples. This is the examples of oppression, of injustice, ethnic, groups being targeted or people being targeted because of their ethnicity. This is what we should be worried about, and for some reason, nobody seems to give a crap.
Between you and people who wanted to murder you. Hi, camera.
So it's hard to hear, but the woman who, I guess she's videotaping it from over her shoulder, is walking through a bucolic neighborhood in Cambridge, Massachusetts. She's being followed by I believe it's a Harvard professor or Harvard dean's wife. And I'll try to amplify what she says when we get to it.
Thank you for walking through neighborhoods and making.
Thank you for walking through our neighborhood, making us feel unsafe.
With your terrorist scarf.
With your terrorist headscarf.
Palestinians felt pretty unsafe when Israelis occupied their country,
And so she responds, Palestinians feel unsafe when Israelis occupy their country. Seems like a fair response. All this woman is doing is walking through a neighborhood with a headscarf. And that leads the professor's wife, or the donor's wife, I'm not quite clear on who that she is, but she's closely associated with Harvard, to follow her around, get out of her car and follow her.
I'm glad you're so proud of
And that was it. So that's basically.
I'm not.
So she said something about being on the side of terrorists. Clearly another. I don't know if I call that assault, harassment. Nothing happens. Nothing happens to these people. They get away with it over and over and over. There is an example of I guess, Zionist professor who is getting a little bit of pushback at Columbia. And it's good. It's the right thing. I'm glad it's happening. But in the end, it kind of shows, I believe, again, that there's different rules. The students are not being protected if their voices are pro-Palestine. If their voices are anti-Israel, anti-genocide, your voice will simply not be protected. Instead, if you speak out, and again, this guy should be in trouble. I believe this Professor Davidal, Shal Davidal, I think he should be in trouble. He called the dean, the president, Manoush Shafik, a coward. So if you call the president names, you could be in trouble. And in this case, you should be. But not if you go after students. Not if you grab a student from behind, like Professor Fisk did. Not if you harass a student walking in your neighborhood. You can do that all day long. You can tell the valedictorian of your class, you don't get to speak. Because you amplified the voices of victims. You can do all that. But you can't call the president of your university a coward. Which, by the way, she is a coward. She was a coward for not speaking out against Stefanik, speaking up to her. But, no, I mean, Davidal shouldn't be allowed to say that. It's not right. And he said it because he said, you're not quieting pro-terror voices at the school. If a student gives a speech and says, Israel brought this on itself, that's totally okay. There's nothing anti-Semitic about that. If a student says, apparently some said this was a beautiful thing, this was an awesome thing, I don't like it. I don't like celebrating deaths. I have no reason to believe that's anti-Semitic. That's the cheers of people who have been systematically repressed, oppressed, persecuted for years, saying, okay, finally they're getting a little bit of what they gave us. A taste of what they've been handing us. That's understandable. I am more upset by the things I've done to hurt people than when they hurt me. When I was hurt. What Hamas did on October 7th was terrible. Israel had a choice. It could choose to respond with an orgy of violence, killing 30, 40,000, an umpteen number of people, almost all of whom are innocent. Or it could say, okay, this is our road to Damascus moment when we're going to change. We're really going to take our foot off the throats of the Palestinian people. Because otherwise, all that will happen is we're all going to go blind. An eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind. Israel made the absolute wrong choice. And they're the ones who had the choice. They're the ones with the power. And we are the ones, even more than Israel, with the power. And we could have said to Israel, no, stop. You don't get to do this. We're not going to let you do it. We're not going to support this. From today's Al Jazeera. 30 bodies found at the hospital. Another 30 more bodies. Where Israel supposedly where are the tunnels? No tunnels. Just dead people. And that's not the only headline for today. I think yesterday I reported something like 56. Maybe I'm exaggerating. I might be wrong about that. But I think, and I'm not going to go back and look right now, that Al Jazeera reported somewhere around 56 killed in the past 24 hours. That would have been yesterday. So from today, Al Jazeera, 11 people killed, including 5 children. And where are they striking? Rafah, the city where Israel said, go to Rafah. You'll be safer there. 1.5 million displaced. displaced Palestinians are just crammed, jammed, like sitting ducks. All right, I got a few more minutes left. 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. We have to change. Reading these stories breaks my heart day after day. We, as a nation, I feel like we've lost our soul completely. We are siding with the bullies, the oppressors, the victimizers, the killers. And we're siding with them over and over and over. We're siding with them when they say, you don't get to tell people about our crimes. You don't get to expose our violent, immoral behavior. Our former free speech champions are saying, you don't get to speak. Ignoring the exigent circumstances that compel people to speak out against genocide. It's heartbreaking what's happening in this country of ours, in this world of ours. And I always say I don't want to just complain and whine and run my hands together. It sucks. Who wants to feel powerless? And I've in the past said, yeah, vote for Jill Stein, support the Green Party. And I'm not going to back away from that. Not all in for the Green Party right now because some of their views I think are a little they're not the same as mine. I think their focus is again far too much on identity politics. And you could say, well, Hal, what about you? All you do is talk about the identity of these Palestinians. That's because they're being killed. That's because they're being targeted. They're being told they can't speak. But if it was a Jewish student who wanted to speak on behalf of the Palestinians, I would be on their side as well. It's not the identity of the individual. Identity matters insofar as it reflects you are in fact a victim. You are being targeted based on that identity. Or you're speaking in favor of people who are victims. Then it matters. It doesn't matter if you're elite. It doesn't matter, or it matters much, much, much less. You're already privileged. The Palestinians and the Muslims, because the student at USC, the valedictorian Asna, is not Palestinian. She's South Asian. But she's speaking on behalf of the Palestinians and other victims of genocide. And that's why that matters. That's what matters. All right, I'll cut it short here. I have a couple of other stories, but they'll keep for the free-for-all tomorrow. And I think it's better that I not sort of bring them into this because the topic is so important. Both our support for Israel and our government's crackdown on voices that speak out against it. I don't want to dilute that message with other topics. I'll be back tomorrow, Friday, for the free-for-all. Enjoy the rest of your day.